This is 91.3 FM, WCUW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr. Chris Radio of Horror program. And tonight on Radio of Horror, we have in the studio with us from Boston Horror Comics, as well as Hellcat Press, a new independent little comic book thing in the Massachusetts area, which is just going to be putting out a anthology in October, just in time for Halloween, called Dark Lady, a horrifying anthology.
Yay.
We have Lindsay Moore in the studio with us. Hello.
Hello.
And she'll be appearing at the Hartford Comic Con in September in Hartford, Massachusetts. Thank you for coming in the studio with us, Lindsay.
Hartford, Connecticut. I'm sorry.
So be sure to visit her there.
Yes.
Hartford.
It's a 3-day convention. People will be there. I don't know the list names of actors and stuff that will be on. I just know they just added Agent Tripp from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. who got killed off this season.
Oh, cool.
For their thing. Spoilers to anyone who hadn't seen season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Spoilers, I guess.
Yeah, oh well. So what is Dark Lady, a horrifying anthology?
Dark Lady...
You said
I'm sorry. I will try not to.
No bullying.
That's
Dark
okay.
Lady is our very first horror anthology. It is our all-female horror anthology, meaning all-female writers and all-female artists.
Couldn't enter that.
Cool.
No, I do thank you for having me on the show to talk about it. So in a way, you are contributing. Our next anthology will be a co-ed one. But right now I'm here to talk about Dark Lady, because we haven't planned out the next anthology at all.
Gotcha.
So
You still have to put out the next one.
Yeah, we have to put out, we have to put out Dark Lady first. So that has to come first because it's the first one. And Yes, it has to make some money, so everyone has to go out and buy it.
So Dark Lady, are they going to be specifically horror-related comics? Or?
Yes, they're all horror comics.
Wonderful.
They're going to be as twisted and evil as like horror movies and stuff like that, or like horror comics we've seen before, like Hack and Slash or Witches or 30 Days a Night.
I would say yes. I would say we have 12 stories, and an overwhelming number of these things have a lot of body horror in them. I was genuinely surprised at like just all of the body horror. There's like,
like the Fly body horror.
Some of it is like mutation stuff, and then some of it is like weird, not really mutilation, but like just crazy stuff happening.
Like Videodrome.
A little bit, yeah, I would say.
Why do you think most women put in body horror stuff? Is it because do you think people are gonna look at the anthology and look at it as like this is a metaphor for women who are? I feel between the male and female, women go through a lot more body horror than men.
We do.
Yes, and I am 100%. I mean, we both have acne and we hate body acne, but that's the extent of what guys gotta have to go through.
I read an article, and I cannot remember who wrote it, but it was basically the gist of it was women are hardwired for horror, kind of based on what bodies go through, and kind of.
I think that's a horror show.
It is kind of a horror show.
I don't think that's a beautiful. I think it's a beautiful thing that you can create life. You can create life that is beautiful, but birth
is terrifying.
Horrific.
We had to watch The Miracle of Birth in the 8th grade, and you could hear every girl in the room crossing her legs, and all of the boys were just like, like lurching backwards in terror and just being like, oh my god.
So they actually showed the birthing video, the birth. Oh my god, I don't remember seeing that. I do not remember seeing that. I just remember seeing like the cartoon motions of this is what the uterus looks like. It comes out through here.
No, it was like a Nova video presentation, and it was terrifying.
So this is completely this is really well put together because it's all like just like that. Now I also noticed on the cover you have some type of like squid-like thing. Again, is it invoking like H.P. Lovecraft? Because Lovecraft stuff like Dagon has a lot to do with body horror.
It does. I don't necessarily. I'm trying to think now.
By the way, you should go to Necronomicon in August.
Oh, cool. Where is that? Do you know? Or
Providence.
Okay.
Where Lovecraft is buried.
Oh yeah. Cool. I'll have to check that out. We do have a couple of. Nothing is quite over the top, overtly Lovecraft. I don't think we're going to see any Cthulhu-like monsters appearing. There's an awful lot of madness and psychological stuff that is reminiscent of Lovecraft and Poe.
Like Mountain of Madness.
Yep, Mountain of Madness type stuff. There's a lot of... we've got a handful of stories that kind of, involve like an unreliable narrator who isn't really sure of what's happening around her or him, and just crazy things keep happening, and it's a lot of it is kind of like, I can't trust my own mind. I can't trust what's happening around me, and I don't know, and a lot of really crazy stuff. So I would say that there is some Lovecraftian influence in there, but nothing super like you're not going to see Cthulhu pop up.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the top 5 stories coming out of your anthology that you could talk about?
Well, hold on a second.
Maybe if that's being a little too.
I don't want to reveal a lot of stuff.
Maybe not give away the authors or the names, but give like top 5 type of stories. That way,
Okay,
no
sure.
one's being like favoritism.
So Lindsay, in addition to putting out these anthologies and working on them, is also a comic book writer. And I'm sitting here in the studio, just very happily strumming through all of these books that she's brought, and she's kind of marked the pages where she's done stories, and they're just lovely.
This Dolly thing
Thank
is
you.
pretty creepy.
Thank you.
I did the 24-hour comic book, create your own comic book thing in 2007.
Oh,
It
nice.
turned
Oh, yeah.
It
Nice.
turned into a children's book actually because I couldn't
Oh, I
write.
want to see that.
I couldn't draw a panel. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's about children who get eaten by a pumpkin on Halloween and saved by death.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
And I sat on it for a few years, and I was finally decided, I'm going to turn this to a children's book because this is clearly not a comic book at all. There's no sequential artwork whatsoever.
Dolly is
Nice.
very, 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 very loosely based a true story because I did a lot of babysitting growing up, and one time I did find the nanny cam.
No.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
weird.
happened. It was in a teddy bear on top of the TV, and the little boy I was babysitting for, he was reaching for it, and I picked it up to hand it to him, and I realized that it was just too heavy to be like a toy.
That's freaky.
And then I
that they
realized
didn't
the
tell you
eyes were
that.
mismatched, and then I realized, oh, that's not a button, that's a camera lens. So I just stuck it back down, and it was a really weird, surreal, freaked me out so much. I was like maybe 16 or 17, and it just really freaked me out. The stories that, I'm excited for all of the stories. I'm so excited for all of them. But I guess the ones I would say are, not, I don't want to use the word favorite. No, I would say I'm excited for all of them, but I'm very excited for, yeah, God, so many, and I'm looking at these, so many of them have body horror. Oh my God. Zits, Bog Baby, the
title.
Toothless, and The Cats Came Back.
Sweet.
Or I think, and Word of Mouth. Word of Mouth is a good one too. Although they're all really good. The Complex Brain is a good one. The Day the Devil Saw Blood. I'm really excited for that one. Kira is another fun one. Well, I don't know if fun's the right word. Yeah, I'll go with Kira. And the thing won't load properly.
Our sick obsession with death and horror and murder and mayhem can be fun.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think
If
so.
you're Dexter.
It's certainly interesting. I've always been very drawn to the horror genre, just because I think that it's the most unpredictable of every genre out there. I mean, you go into like a romantic comedy and you always know how that's going to end, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's going to end with the guy and the girl, they're going to get together. But I feel like horror films just have the potential to go in so many different directions because, the second that you see like a hip new horror film, it becomes cliche really fast, I think.
Yeah.
Like when The Sixth Sense came out, everyone was like losing their minds over like, oh my God, this is so brilliant. What an amazing ending. Oh my God, this guy's the next Hitchcock. But if you were to do that again,
Right.
everyone would just be like, oh, this is a ripoff and it's terrible and it's unoriginal. So I think horror, you have to keep being original. Weird.
But I have a very kind of specific question for
Yeah,
you.
sure.
And because I'm relatively new to the world of comic books, graphic novels kind of things, you are the writer for all of these. And I'm looking
Yes.
at one right now, this wonderful short, I think just 3 pages, called Amazons versus Valkyries,
Yep.
which you did with, right?
Yep.
Just great. If you haven't seen this, Chris.
Yeah.
So it's art by Laurel Leak, and you wrote it. And I'm interested in how that works because there is no words in it. And
Yes, there's no dialogue.
yeah,
in
your
that
job
one.
as a writer, I mean, how much in
basically-
every comic do you?
Oh, well, basically, yeah, because a lot of the times I'll show people, my comics and my work, and they go, oh, so you just wrote the balloons? And I say, well, no,
No,
that's
right,
not
right.
really it, because a lot of them don't have a lot of dialogue. But,
You map out a script.
Yeah, I basically wrote out a script. So for this one, can
Yeah.
I see that for a
Oh,
second?
yeah, for sure.
So, for this one, for Amazons versus Valkyries, the story behind this was kind of interesting because a friend of mine wanted to do this this sort of project where someone would write a 3-page script and then different people would illustrate it. And so he kind of volunteered me to go first, and he said, so write us a script and make it about like Vikings or something. I don't know. And I was just like, I don't know anything about Vikings. Oh my god. And so that got me onto Valkyries, and then basically
The Viking TV show hadn't started yet, that you could just watch that and be like,
No,
I got it.
No, that hadn't started yet. No, this was
Before
like
2013 then.
Yeah, this was years ago.
Okay.
But basically, the Amazons and the Valkyries are 2 opposing field hockey teams, and so the first page sets up the idea of a field hockey match, and then the middle page is the girls. They're meant to be playing field hockey, but the fantasy that they're all kind of sharing is that they are Amazons and they are Vikings, and they are not Vikings, Valkyries. They are Amazons and they are Valkyries, and they are fighting each other. And then in the end, one team wins and they all shake hands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But basically for this one, I just wrote out what I wanted to happen in the first page. I said, okay, I want there to be 3 panels, and the top panel is our establishing shot of the field and the teams, and then the middle panel is the ref, and then the bottom panel is the ref and the 2 captains of the teams. And then for the middle page, where it's the great big Amazon Valkyrie fight scene, basically I didn't put anything really specific. I just put down, this is meant to be the girls' fantasy, so we're going to show Amazons and Valkyries fighting each other interspersed with field hockey playing.
Yeah.
And what my artist did, what she chose to do was she actually just shows Amazons and Valkyries, fighting each other. There's no real field hockey in this panel at all. And then, for the last page, I was like, well, it's clear that the Valkyries win, and they all, shake hands, and it's all, like, fun. But, yeah, basically that is...
Is it pronounced Valkyries or Valkyries?
I think it's Valkyries.
Okay. I was wondering if I've been saying it long all this time.
I don't know. But
we're talking about the ones that take you to Valhalla.
Yes. But basically, in a nutshell, I'm just writing out what I want to happen in each panel. I like to give my artist a lot of freedom because I do view it as a very 50-50 process. So, I mean, yeah, there are certain things that I definitely want to happen, but then, the artist is free to add in their own details. Like the one that you're looking at now, Chris.
Faking it.
Yeah. A friend of mine and I, we came up with that idea because I used to work in a company that did surveillance for insurance companies who were investigating whether or not people were committing medical fraud. And
that never happens.
Yeah. So basically, we came up with the idea for this script where we said, okay, there's an investigator, and he goes to this guy's house, and he talks his way inside, and it turns out that the guy's a serial killer. So, we basically decided the action that we wanted to have in each panel, but then, regarding the way everything looked and the way everything was set up, we left that in the artist's hands. Like, for example, in one of the bottom panels on that page, with the shelf with all the jars on it, we originally wanted...
Body parts.
Yep. We originally wanted a jar full of teeth on the shelf, but the artist contacted me and said, I can't do that because they keep coming out looking like popcorn. They don't
even
look
if
like
even
teeth.
if they like did a close up of them, whatever, you could see the actual root canal.
Yeah,
not the root canal, but the
root
you know what I mean?
of the
Yeah,
tooth,
the root of the tooth. Which does distinguish it as a...
Yeah, well, because we were working with one page for that, and we were trying to get as many panels as possible, and as many panels where you could clearly see what was happening, we really wanted the whole thing. So we changed it from...
You only had one page to do a comic, right?
Yeah, we only had one page for that. Because otherwise I would have said, oh yeah, let's go with a close shot and we'll see, the roots of the teeth and everything. But, yeah, that's this panel down here.
This here, yeah.
Or actually, no, it's this one where the guy's holding it.
Great.
So instead he put in a jawbone.
Yeah.
And originally he said, well, I could do a jar full of eyes, but I feel like that's too cliche. And I said, yeah, that is kind of cliche. Like, what else do you have? And he was like, well, I could do a jawbone. And I said, yeah, do that. You don't often see that in horror movies. You really don't. You see like the jar full of eyeballs in horror movies all the time. I think anyway. I don't know. Maybe I'm watching just weird movies where there's just jars of eyes everywhere. So I like to let the artist have, when I do a script, I like to let the artist have, freedom to put their own touch on it, as it were.
Does your husband share? Excuse me. Does your husband share your weird and twisted obsession with horror as well?
He actually does not. No, he's not really into horror. There are a couple of horror films that he really likes. Aliens, Event Horizon, and The Thing are, I think, the ones that he really likes. But anything with like a ton of like, he doesn't like creepy dolls or like torture. Don't
let him watch the movie Dolls.
Although that movie's, I have seen that movie, and
it just came out from Scream Factory.
Yeah, that's a crazy movie. But yeah, basically, he's not super into horror, but I'm not gonna try to force it on him.
And actually, you should have your husband tune in next week, because next week we're gonna. Well, it might. I'm pretty sure it's gonna air next week. We're gonna have Tom Holland on the show. He's the director of Child's Play.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's gonna like that. No.
But he also directed a great vampire movie called Fright Night. So.
Yes. Yeah, no, I don't think he can deal with no. Yeah, he's not really into horror, but I think that it's important in a relationship that you each have your own interest that is separate from what the other person has,
and not judge that person by that interest of being horror,
and not judge. Sometimes I'll say to him, like, do you think I'm really weird? Like,
yes,
like,
that's
am I
awesome.
Just weird, and he'll be like, no, you're not really that weird. I mean, and I'm like, but I do like all this horror stuff, and it's kind of dark, and
we all go a little weird sometimes, Lindsay.
And violence, and he's just like. Yeah, but that doesn't make you a weird person. That doesn't make you bad. It's just your imagination and stuff like that. So he's very supportive of it, even if he's not super interested in it. Like, he is very excited for Hellcat Press and for Dark Lady. He's going to be, he's a graphic designer, so he's going to be helping me put it together.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Somebody should make a Scream comic, but not rip off Scream, but be like the horror comics maybe want to kill people.
Yeah.
And like it's set in the 50s or something.
Oh, yeah,
and for it to make total sense, whereas today people are like, who reads comics anymore? But in the 50s, when everyone was cracking down on horror comics, saying they were going to destroy the youth of America,
destroy the youth.
They were going to become like bank robbers and murderers and thieves and
juvenile delinquents,
juvenile delinquency, and promote drugs and rock and roll and homosexuality and oh my god!
Oh no, the children! Won't someone please think of the children?
And literally, this is why there were no horror comics for many years, because yes, and they blamed Tales from the Crypt, and of course the congressional hearings on the comic books were not the comic book industry was not represented very well when you had E.C. Gaines, the guy who was behind E.C. Comics, Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Fear, at the congressional hearing, and not like Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, any of those. anyone who's actually in the working for Marvel, DC. No, we had the horror comic guy. That really was a bad idea. You should have had somebody who created wholesome heroes like Superman and Batman. But then, of course, they targeted Batman as promoting homosexuality, so that probably wouldn't have been a good idea if Bob Kane had shown up.
A great idea.
Yeah.
No, but I like the fact that horror comics have kind of made a resurgence and that they've come back.
Oh yeah, they're huge now, and they're very
huge.
well. And you can say that I write comic books in a time that it's pretty accepted. Everything good and crappy is being made into some type of project of some kind. It's drawing attention to comics, and people are buying comics, whether they buy them online or they're buying them on Kindle, whatever. They're buying comics, and I'm a woman in comics too, which was not heard of at the time in the 50s.
It's getting, it's a fun time to be a comics fan.
Yes,
it's very fun.
And also, they're a rare thing because there are not a lot of women in comics.
There kind of aren't
on the rise, hopefully.
And that I'm hoping that's on the rise. And that was also one of the driving forces behind why I wanted Dark Lady to be my first anthology, and why I wanted it to be
strictly women,
an all-female anthology.
Now, do they have to be also only from New England, Massachusetts?
No, I have contributors from all around the world.
Oh, okay, cool.
I put ads up on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, DeviantArt, Reddit, like just everywhere. And I
don't use Reddit enough. I should.
I got people from all over the world. My very first ever pitch was from a woman in Finland, actually.
Is there a great comic book publisher? Independent comic book publisher in the New England area that you recommend for people trying to get into comics that are like, I really don't have the resources to print 1,000 copies of this, but if I get with a publisher, they'll help me print it. And even though they'll own publishing rights, I still own what I'm created and it's mine.
Oh, Geez, I don't know, because I'm going to be doing Dark Lady myself, pretty much.
Well, Hellcats. Who owns Hellcats?
Me.
Oh, okay. 'Cause
That's me.
Okay. You put it in the
baby.
the third person on
I
the
know,
place.
I know.
Like, I was like, oh, she has a boss.
I
This
know,
is cool.
I use the royal we on the site.
Our very own Lindsay Moore.
Our very own. Yep, that's
Yes.
me. It's just it's me and my husband and our 2 cats.
I'm sure the cats
That's the
contribute a
name.
lot.
Oh, they do. They really do.
They really do.
They really do. Yeah, but I really wanted it to be an all-female anthology because, you know, I want more women in comics, and I want more women in horror too. You know, when I pitched the idea to a co-ed group of people, and I pitched it back in December, and you know, I said, you know, as part of my pitch, that my opening line was, you know, horror is a very male-dominated genre, and women are underrepresented. And this guy who's sitting a few seats down from me, he interrupts me and he starts saying Mary Shelley over and over again. And he's just Mary Shelley, Mary Shelley, Mary Shelley. And he keeps getting louder and louder and louder. The more I try to talk, the louder he gets. He's just talking over me. And because I'm trying to keep going. And I look over at the guy who's supposed to be moderating the discussion, and he's not doing anything. He's just kind of smiling at me like, oh, I don't hear anything. Please continue. I don't hear a thing. So finally, this guy shuts up, and I'm finally able to finish my presentation, and I say, like, well, you know, it's important to me, and it's something I'm really passionate about. Are there any questions? And the moderator raises his hand, and he says, yeah, but what if I collaborate with a woman? And I was just kind of like, oh my God, he wasn't even listening to me.
Yeah.
And then that sort of opened up this floodgate of joke questions from the other guys in the room. I was getting questions like, what if I just don't tell you I'm a man? Are you going to require proof? Like, am I going to have to send
So just not getting the
pictures
point
in?
of what you were
just
saying
not getting
at
the
all.
point at all, and
Yeah.
it turned into a giant joke, and I was
Yeah.
just furious.
Absolutely, right.
Words can't describe how furious I was at this, and I was so angry, and I was just like, oh my God, I was...
Yeah.
Lindsay
was-
Smash.
Yeah.
I was so angry about it, you know, because, I mean, this was a group, and, you know, other people had pitched anthologies before, other men had pitched anthologies, and no one had ever, you know, ridiculed them or interrupted or tried to belittle their idea or whatever, and I was so just angry. I can't describe how angry I was. But that sort of fueled it on, because then I said,
Yes,
well,
yeah.
now I'm going to do it
Yeah.
just to spite you. I'm going to do it.
There you go.
And,
Yeah.
you know, at this point, I have around 100 pages and 12 submissions.
Wow.
So
It's gonna be big.
I would say that for my first anthology, this is going really good. Knock on, I don't know if that's made of wood, but knock on wood anyway.
Yeah. This here.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. But yeah, so I am really keeping my fingers crossed for this, and then, you know, I'm just really enthusiastic about it. I'm excited about it. All of the women I've told about it have been really, really excited. So I'm definitely hoping to do more female anthologies in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But
Just to keep it strictly female. Just
Yeah.
don't gender bend it.
yeah, I mean, I do want to have co-ed anthologies and anthologies that have, you know, like other people and stuff too. But I am gonna, you know, have another, like, you know, Dark Lady Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is coming out in October, right?
Yes.
In time for Halloween.
Yeah.
Just in time for Halloween. The final artwork from
You should
my
come to Rock
artist-
and Shock with it, the horror convention in Worcester with it,
Oh, wow.
with all your writers, and have like you all buy the table.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know how much it is. You have to go online to
Yeah.
rockandshock.com. www.rockandshock.com, hosted by Kevin Barbary, my buddy
Right.
and frequent guest of Radio Horror. You can go there and find out what their tables are, and then set up shop.
I would love to do that.
You should totally do
Yes.
that since it comes out the
Yeah.
same. You will probably get, because
would love
nobody
to.
does comics at Rock and Shock.
Oh, wow. That
Yeah,
would be
you
great.
get once in a while. We have like Ken Kelly come.
Oh, wow.
Do you know who that is?
Yeah. I
Uh,
actually, no. I
all right.
actually don't know who that
I'll
is.
let this part out. Ken Kelly is the cover artist for all of the albums in the 70s for Kiss. And he
Okay.
was also a comic book artist, cover artist for like Dark Horse and Harris for Vampirella.
Oh, okay.
So he drew a ton of Vampirella in the 80s.
Oh, I've probably seen his artwork then.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
fantasy-ish Vampirella,
Mm-hmm.
you know, still keeping with that ridiculous-looking costume, which is just a bathing suit.
It's not even a very good bathing suit. That thing would Yeah, no.
No, they
Not
need a
even
lot
a good
of.
bathing suit. I don't know how
She put some glue on the inside of that thing.
Cannonball, it
Lose
just
it.
comes right off.
Right to the
God.
nipples.
God, but taking it off then.
But she's a vampire, so she just strips her freaking skin off and just grows right back.
Fine, I guess.
Yeah, she's fine. Nowadays, she actually wears like like a pant, like a skirt suit or whatever. She's got like a
Yeah.
red skirt and a jacket, even though she's got like 3 or 4 buttons undone or whatever. It's still much more conservative.
Yeah.
And then when she goes into battle, yes, she's in
Slightly
the like more like I can move a little easier.
Yeah,
but if I'm
yeah.
doing like investigating stuff and walking around, they draw me in a
Yeah, right.
skirt suit.
Yeah, inconspicuous. You know, I mean,
Right.
if she's gonna be investigating, she should look inconspicuous and not be wearing the little red bathing suit thing.
So he does cover art. He did this one for Dark Horse. It has Boba Fett like this or whatever, and Darth Vader with his like lightsaber
I've
like
seen
coming at
that.
Boba Fett.
Dope.
It's called Boba Fett, Enemy of the Empire.
Yeah,
and
I've
it's
seen that one.
awesome or whatever.
Oh yes, I have. That's a really cool cover.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's awesome. I will definitely check that out.
Yeah.
I will definitely check that out. But yeah. So my final artwork I'm still getting art from my contributors. The final art to do August 1st. In case any of my contributors, in case you're listening, you have until August 1st. Get me all your stuff. And yeah, so it'll be printed and for sale in October.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yay.
So I'm very excited for it.
Do you have a pull list on Wednesday?
Comics that I like. I love Afterlife with Archie. It is like my new favorite thing.
Sabrina's, I think, a lot better.
Sabrina is good too. I love Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. It's really good.
Reminds me a lot of Steve Niles' Witches and Rosemary's
Yeah.
Baby. Of course, that was the cover for the first issue. One of the alternate
Yeah,
covers
yeah, that was one of the alternate covers.
was the two
was-
aunts or whatever, very like Rosemary's Baby.
It
like
was a homage to Rosemary's Baby. I don't really read a lot of superhero comics.
Also, it's exactly what like that TV show would have been if it had been like
If it
darker
had been-
and on like
If it had been good.
yeah.
I watched a couple
It-
episodes and I said nope.
I think if that show had been on the CW instead of like TGIF's ABC, I think it would have been
It
like
would have been
along
a
lines of
lot.
the darker
Yes.
Sabrina show. Like Salem would have been like this little wise ass little, even more than he is on the Sabrina show. He was like the only thing I could like stand because it was so
Yeah,
just
and he
high
was
school
just a terrible little
drama.
puppet.
Oh.
He was a really bad little puppet looking, but he was still funny.
Yeah,
He's still funny.
and she rode around in that vacuum cleaner. Oh,
What else am I reading? Oh, Chew. I love Chew.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
It's all wrapped up, but I really loved Lock and Key.
yeah.
That was like
We're
my
playing
God, I loved it.
Israel Skelton, owns Skelton Studios in Maine, Bangor, Maine, who is really good friends with Joe Hill and is at his table every Boston Comic Con that Joe
Yes.
Hill comes to, along with Gabriel Rodriguez is going to be on the show tonight with this interview.
yeah. I saw on the
Yeah.
on the thing. He does the
real
little
keys.
commemorative keys.
Yeah.
And he does actually
He does other
Is
stuff
that
like
the-
Hellboy's guns and things
Hellboy's
like that.
guns. Does he also do the from Chew the little chogs? Is that
I-
the same
Oh.
thing?
I don't
The
know
little
about.
chicken thingies.
I don't know that, but I know
Good
he just
question.
did. I know he's done Mjolnir and
Okay.
Stormhammer,
Okay, yeah,
so which are Beta Ray Bill and Thor's hammer.
that's right. Yeah,
And I know he's working on Janbarin, which is Odin's son's hammer.
right.
Because Thor is now Jane Foster,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy we always knew to be Thor is now just called the Odin son.
Yes,
So
that's right.
so that way he can still have a name, and he's carrying around Janbarin.
Yeah, that's another reason I don't do a lot of
Try
superhero
explaining that to
comics.
people.
No, I don't really do superhero comics anymore because at some point I used to read Ultimate X-Men, and at some point I stopped.
that doesn't
Well,
exist anymore because they wiped out the
it's-
Ultimate Universe.
It's also it got really terrible. Superhero comics,
Lame.
and I'm gonna sound like such an old person, but like I can't follow all of the different alternate universes and the different plot lines and the different everything anymore. I just can't. I just don't have time to keep track of it.
It's
I feel
very
like I
hard,
would need to
especially
put
now
together-
that
job.
Secret Wars is going
I
on.
feel like I would need to put together a full-on spreadsheet, like just to like take a wall in my apartment and like tack up things with string and make it look like a conspiracy theorist
Yeah.
den.
You look like Mulder, Agent Mulder.
yeah,
Yeah,
Agent Mulder. I also really like A-Force and Spider-Gwen.
yeah. Spider-Man has been okay. It's not
Spider-Gwen's been
as
okay so
great as I
far.
thought it was gonna be.
I think that it's such a young series though. It's only like 5 or 6 issues. I feel like it could still get better.
It's gonna end and then restart
Yeah,
after
which-
Secret Wars,
which I
which
think
is
is
so
just-
stupid.
Which I think is the dumbest thing.
Same thing with
ever.
Silk. Silk's gonna have her comic book, and they already announced that she's gonna get her own book again after Secret Wars. So it's
Yeah,
like
I feel like-
great, and,
Yeah.
and Spider Woman, and it's like really. I mean, I get why Peter's doing it. I get Miles getting his own book because he's gonna be the regular Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
But we don't need to restart Gwen and Silk's book.
just have them keep going. Just
It's
have them
gonna be the
keep
same
going.
teams too.
Don't restart anything. Just have it keep going.
It's so
really
stupid.
ridiculous.
But then you gotta have 6 Spider-Man titles. You got Spider-Verse, Amazing Spider-Man, Peter's book, Spider-Man, Miles' book, Spider-Gwen, Silk, and Spider-Woman.
Yeah,
and
this is
Spider-Woman, this is
another-
the first time she's actually been part of Spider-Man's thing, because she's usually been with the Avengers.
She's usually been
but
off with
because
the
of
Avengers.
Spider-Verse, and Spider-Verse is getting their own book,
That's
which is
right.
basically them hopping around the multiverse of Spider-Man.
I don't even like spiders.
Which
This
is like
too much for
Arana,
me.
the Spider-Girl, Hispanic Spider-Girl chick, the teen one with the
That's
black
cool.
and white costume,
Right.
the Britain Spider-Man, if he's still alive, the Spider-Pork Kid, the
Spider-Pig.
Spider-Pig,
Spider-Pig.
and
Spider
Does
Port
whatever
Kid.
Spider-Pig does.
Spider-Pork Kid, who last we saw was captured by Norman Osborn. Spider-Gwen had to save her. He's like, "You're not a figment of my imagination."
Oh,
He's
God,
like,
it's-
"No, I'm not. Don't you remember Spider-Verse?" She's like, "I don't remember anything after the Big Bang,"
Yeah.
which was Secret Wars.
Yeah.
And I guess, is Spider-Gwen going to become part of the regular Marvel Universe?
I would like that. I mean, actually,
Because I can
think there
keep
was-
Gwen dead. We never have to worry about her god-awful children with Norman Osborn, that
Yeah.
awful storyline
Bizarro.
where she gave in
Weird.
her base instincts and slept with Norman Osborn and has goblin babies and ugh.
the
Oh,
audience
my.
can probably hear me roll.
You
my eyes
can
at
blame
that.
J. Michael Straczynski for that, who's like
gonna
very
blame
like,
everyone
I
for
write
that."
very diverse stuff, but when it comes to characters like Gwen Stacy, I don't know anything.
I know nothing. You know.
I create Babylon 5 and 8 Senses, which is all filled with all these kooky characters from every part of the world and every walk of life on the planet Earth is included in the show. But when it comes to Spider-Man, I
know nothing.
really effed that up.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I understand
Yes.
your thing about hero comics. It's so much easier to read independent
I-
comic books like The Walking Dead or
Yeah.
Powers. You want a good hero comic book? Read Powers. It's
I've
so
heard
straightforward.
good things about Powers. I like
The
Fables
comic
a lot,
book you've heard
too.
good things about, I hope, not the TV show.
I didn't know there was a TV show for
Yes,
Powers.
it's on PlayStation Network. It
Oh,
stars.
I don't think I get that.
It stars Shiloh Copley from
Okay.
District 9
Right,
and
right.
Elysium plays. But without,
Tell us
since you haven't
more.
read the comic book, I'm not going to get into all the other changes they made, but they suck.
Yeah.
They suck unbelievably and destroy the characters you love. And I'm like, I am all for like changing something.
Yeah.
But what you did was just like,
too much.
okay,
and it
so
was-
his wife is now this cutesy little fangirl that fawns all over him and bangs superheroes. Ew. And
That's-
Callista is supposed to be 10, but she's a 15-year-old who sleeps with 40 to 50-year-old superheroes.
Oh, that's upsetting.
Ew.
Yeah.
Changes go
Yeah.
on and on and on.
No.
Okay. But read the comic by Brian
Okay.
Michael Bendis. It's
Sure
great.
thing. I will. I'm always
Sorry,
looking
go
for
ahead.
new comics to read. so-
Yeah.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
Mm-hmm.
I have been curious because I asked you earlier how long that you have been writing for comic books, and you said it's
Sure.
about 7 years, right?
About 7 years.
Yeah, so that
I've been doing
initial
that.
start, like first, like what was behind that, and also what was the first project that you worked on, and
Okay, so
where'd you get the inspiration?
let me think. Well, I actually was taking a class at the Cambridge Center for Adult Education when it was right after I'd graduated from college. It was a class about comics writing,
Oh, nice.
and it was a really good class. I really liked it. And the guy who ran the class suggested that I join a group called the Boston Comics Roundtable, which I am no longer a member of.
Is that still going on?
It's still going on. Yep.
Oh,
Yep. I'm not part of it anymore, though.
okay.
Anyway, so basically, you know, for a while it was a really, really great group, I felt. There have been some changes that I am not a fan of, and there have been some incidents that I am also not a fan of.
So is it, what was the group's purpose initially?
The purpose was, and actually still is, to unite comic book writers and artists. That's the main goal of it. The very first comic I ever wrote for them is actually in the Boston history issue, which I think, Chris, you have
Cool, yeah.
over there. Yes, the
Yeah, you want to pass it over
Boston
here?
history issue. It was
Inbound
not
Four.
the very first anthology that they ever put out. That was their fourth anthology, but I think it was, at the time, it was the most successful, and it might still be the most successful anthology to date. And my story was about the Boston Strangler. And what I did was I basically, I went to the library, actual
Yeah.
library, because I Googled Boston Strangler and Wikipedia came up first. And
As it will most.
As it will. But I currently work for a textbook company, and so I know that Wikipedia is just not accurate at all. You can't really rely on
Well,
it.
they just came out with a survey saying as of like 2013 or 14, Wikipedia is only actually updated by an average of 364 people a year.
Wow.
There's 7 billion people on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
And only 364 people on average update Wikipedia?
Yeah, that's
That's no wonder Wikipedia is like constantly asking for money. They're
Yeah,
dying as a
they're-
site because Wiki
they are.
is actually much better.
Yeah.
And maintenanced.
But anyway, so I decided not to go to Wikipedia. Instead, I went to the library and I checked out this book about the Boston Strangler, and I came across this particularly very true and very horrifying story.
Yes.
Basically,
Yes. Good comment.
his MO was he would talk his way into women's apartments. He would pretend to be a repairman sent up by
Yes.
a supervisor, and he would talk his way into women's apartments, and then he would really brutally murder them. And he had a young daughter and a wife, and his wife was suffering from very severe depression to a point where she wouldn't really get out of bed. So he was his daughter's primary caregiver. So he actually was very kind and loving to his daughter. And she had this, God, what was it? She had this, it wasn't polio. She had to wear the polio leg braces.
Like Forrest Gump.
Yeah, but she didn't actually have polio. It was something different.
Yeah.
Some sort of
maybe just underdeveloped
pelvic-
like muscle calves
some
or
sort
something,
of
yeah.
something wrong, some sort of congenital pelvic disease. Something
Okay.
was wrong with
Yep.
her leg. She had to wear these straps, and you have to tie them real tight. So he would tie them really, really tight, and he'd always tie a great big bow because she was a little girl and he wanted her to look nice.
Yeah.
Great big bow.
Yeah.
And then when he strangled
He's
women,
a loving serial killer.
When he
when he strangled women with
he'd
their
use-
own clothes, he would tie a great big bow.
What is that even?
Terrifying. That's
weird.
so terrifying.
That's just
And
weird.
the-
on
Did they
so
put
many
this like in the
levels.
movie that they made, The Boston Strangler?
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know. I haven't seen it.
Oh.
They might have. But basically, the story that I found, which is 100% true, because someone actually, when they did a review of Inbound 4, they mentioned my story as a fictionalized account, and I emailed them and said, no, that happened. But basically, he showed up at this one woman's apartment, and he talked his way in. He said, oh, the people downstairs have a leak, and I have to go to your bathroom and fix it. The super sent me up. And she said, oh, yeah, sure, okay. So she takes him into the bathroom. He starts to make her feel very uncomfortable. He's making comments about her body. He's, telling her that
Modeling,
she's really,
yeah.
Yeah, he's saying, you could be a model. And he's also, like, twice her size, and he's got her cornered in the bathroom. So she says to him, oh, keep your voice down. My husband is asleep in the next room. There's no one asleep in the next room. But she says, my husband's asleep in the next room. And he immediately leaves. He just says, I'm in the wrong apartment. And he leaves. And basically, he goes to a different apartment in the same building and pulls the same shtick and winds up murdering a woman.
Because he only wants to murder women
Yeah.
and not leave a
Freaking
whole lot of
bows.
a bigger body count in a single apartment because it destroys his MO.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
So she was smart.
yes. She was very, very, very smart. But, like, it was
When was
this,
the Boston Strangler around?
The 60s and 70s?
Okay.
Mostly? No, it was this terrifying story. It was far scarier than anything I could come up with on my own.
Wow.
Yeah, history is where all the really scary stuff is. But anyway, I wrote the script, and then a friend of mine illustrated it. And actually, he really did not like that I included scenes of the Strangler with his daughter.
Did you?
He really didn't like that. He said it's making me uncomfortable that he's so. He had a tough time, I guess.
This is
He had a
the
really
artist?
tough time. The artist, he had a tough
Yeah.
time reconciling the fact that this man could be a very good father to his little girl and then go out and do something that's just horrible and brutal and depraved. And so it was his idea to cast the Strangler in shadow. You only see a silhouette.
I don't think, as far as I can remember, there's a lot of comic books made.
Yep.
I don't think anyone's made a comic book about the Zodiac, the actual killer. You know what I mean? And all the different people he could be. I mean, we have like From Hell, and they have their own version. Like Alan Moore has his own version of like
Yeah.
figuring out. Okay,
And
so the
there's-
killer from Jack the Ripper was really this guy in
guy.
Parliament trying to cover up his own homosexuality and his own issues with the mother queen,
Yeah,
queen
the
mother,
Queen Mum, yep.
Queen Mum or whatever.
Yep.
And I was like
That
That's
was
smart.
Alan Moore,
Very,
yep.
yeah, that was very smart, Alan Moore. It shows that you hate women still, but still.
Oh, Alan Moore.
Alan Moore,
I am-
Watchmen, Killing Joke. Yeah,
I'm not related to Alan Moore.
Yes,
point
let's
that
talk
out.
about that. So your
Sometimes
dad.
I have to, no. Sometimes I have to point out to people that I'm not. It's like sometimes people will be like, "Oh my God, are you?" And they'll be like serious, and I'll be like, "No, of course not."
I'm not British, first of all.
Why would you think it's a very common last name? Why
I'm
would
also
you think that?
20 something,
I'm-
and Alan Moore is like
he's
60
1,000
something.
years old, and I'm not. Even if I was related, I wouldn't go around.
And you're thinking of
advertising
England,
I guess
and
it's just a
this
comics
is
connection.
New England. I never lived in
I've
Old
never,
England.
I've
There's
never
that
met
one
the
thing you need to
guy.
point out. Do I sound like British? No, I sound like I'm from
No, do I?
Connecticut.
No,
Or,
yeah.
sorry, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Yeah, no.
There's a difference between
sometimes
someone who sounds like from Massachusetts.
People occasionally do ask that, but no, I'm not related to him at all.
That's okay. We have a director on once in a while called Jennifer Cameron.
Okay.
And I always,
Oh,
I'm like her.
James
so,
Cameron,
oh,
yeah.
so your brother Kirk Cameron, his religious mumbo jumbo, and your father and his like, let's make one movie every 10 years, Titanic and Avatar,
Yep.
would be so happy with you. She's like, yeah, so we get to rather around Christmas time, me and the Cameron. And we watch Left Behind, and then we watch Terminator.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was my first ever comic, and that was kind of my first horror comic too. Actually, I consider that to be a horror story.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Very definitely.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
then I just kind of kept going from there.
Yeah.
Would you ever do another story based on a true effed up crime in New England, like that thing that happened maybe in like New Hampshire, or just any like really screwed up story in New England? That's a horrific story.
Yeah, I would say so. Actually,
Did you hear about the one I'm talking about? Is like the two kids who broke into the home of one of their classmates and like killed the mom and then like stabbed the daughter to death.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, and it was written into a book. One got the death penalty. I don't know if he's still alive, and the other one's in jail for life because he was the accomplice but didn't actually do the But
I didn't
enough
hear about that.
enough that you go to jail for the rest of your natural life.
Yeah, I would if actually or
the DC
Hellbound.
Sniper. That's a good story
that's a good story, too.
not ever made a lot of about,
That's
and that
true.
can be done in Shadow too because they didn't know who those
didn't
people
know who
were.
it was. No, but for Hellbound Volume 1, the unofficial theme was urban legends. And so a lot of these are a lot of the stories in here are Boston based or New England based urban legends. And the one that I did, Faking It, which is the private eye who gets killed by a serial killer, that was an urban legend that had been floating around the office where I used to work. So I was working at the surveillance company, and that was an urban legend that had been floating around there for a while.
Or you could buy Weird Massachusetts and like start researching maybe one of the like cryptozoology urban legends and create a comic. That'd be an anthology you do.
I would do a comic about Lizzie Borden, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would do.
I don't think there's one been done, but the problem is with that.
There must have been.
The Lifetime TV series right now. It's all about
is there
like
a series?
Yeah,
I saw the movie.
Christina Ricci plays Lizzie Borden, and it's after the trial, and it's boring because everyone's like, she went away. I mean, she didn't get convicted. She just went away from society.
She just became a recluse after.
This is dumb because also leading up to it, it's like either she did or didn't do it. Then you have that Elizabeth Montgomery thing where she did it completely naked, and it's like you're gonna really dramatize something that actually doesn't have a lot of story to it. It's not like this conspiracy thing going on.
I mean, I saw the made-for-TV movie, and I thought that the made-for-TV movie was okay.
Maybe you throw in there like maybe there's like a cult involved, or you could do one. And I don't think there's a comic book ever been done actually based on the real story.
Yeah.
Dracula is based on a story about Mercy Brown, what's considered the first American vampire.
Really?
And I'm using the budding years quotations, people who can't see me. And she basically had all of the stuff that Bram Stoker put into the novel because he read about the story from America that this girl was buried or whatever, and she came back up out of the ground, and they found out she had like, scarlet fever or whatever it is, and the family the town forced the father to find her, chop her head off, stuff it with garlic, to just
and then
completely
do all the vampire
because
stuff.
she was like spreading her flu disease around or whatever.
Yeah, she was like Typhoid Mary basically.
Yeah, in a way.
Kind of, in a way. Yeah. I don't know. I would definitely consider doing another comic based on a true story.
And then there's one that's never been done. Yeah. So maybe you could do it. Throw in just a little bit of the, well, were you there? No. So I'm throwing this extra little thing in there because you weren't alive and I wasn't alive.
We
and
weren't there.
Bram Stoker was because he took to create Dracula.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I would find daunting about doing a true story comic is just because you'd have to do a ton of research.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I mean,
because you're going to have the historians being like,
for the Boston Strangler one that I did, I did do a ton of research. I read 2 books about the Boston Strangler, and then I had to do some research. I went to the actual apartment building where that happened and took some pictures of the outside for my artist. I did try to get in, but I couldn't. It was locked.
Gotcha.
For once, it was locked. So I took some pictures, and then I had to research 50s fashion and stuff, and I had to try to dig up photographs of these real people. The only photograph that they had of the woman who was murdered, she's just a regular picture, and she's not wearing glasses when she actually did wear glasses in real life because he hit her so hard that her glasses fell off. He actually knocked her glasses off when he hit her.
Wow.
Although, I mean, they don't show that in the comic, but I did say to my artist, make sure you draw her with glasses because she wore them in real life.
Yeah.
So
the thing is too, I think that it can be fun, and you can definitely get very into the historical research, but then you can also do some funky adaptation where
Yeah.
it's taking, you know, the general plot line, but then putting it in some alternate universe or present day or whatever, and having them breathing down your neck just a little less. These very historic people, but yeah, and that's funky too. Or you could do like a couple different versions.
Yeah. So that might be interesting. I might do actually for a future Hellcat Press anthology. I might do based on a true story as the theme. Because I do want to do a lot of different themes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of Tales from the Public Domain, where people can pick a short horror story from the public domain and adapt it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that'd be like my gender swap Dracula.
Yeah.
Yep, you could do that. Screams Heard Round the World is another one. It's just folklore and scary stories from all around the world. Seven Deadly Sins is one I really want to do. So yeah, I think like based on a true story would be really, really cool. Or just take an event from history that was really horrifying. And
I have a Seven Deadly Sins story already made up for an idea. That, it's been outlined. I would love to write it as a comic because it'd be very Clive Barker-ish. I'd be picking Lust out of the Seven Deadly Sins, so I'd be writing it very like Clive Barker, right?
Oh yeah.
And find the perfect artist that's going to draw it like the way exactly how I want. And it's like, yes, if you're reading it that way, you're going to have to draw it that way. So don't be squeamish.
Yeah.
Right.
And
well, I will keep you in the loop then. As long as we sell enough copies of Dark Lady, we can do that one. So everyone buy Dark Lady so that Chris can draw his story.
Yes.
Yes.
Go to the
Also, it's just gonna be
bring
a
it to the different
website.
cons I
I will
mentioned.
bring it to the
Yes.
conventions. It will be for sale on the website in October. It's not there now because it hasn't been put together yet.
And make sure all your artists, writers, people who contributed post it themselves because it's a big problem. That they don't do that, they're going to be like, well, it helps if you kind of repost about this too and don't just leave it hanging just thinking it's going to sell itself because that's not how a marketing machine works. That doesn't have billions of dollars at its disposal to be a marketing machine.
We'll plug it
so
too.
I'm hoping to promote it at conventions and on the internet and
Definitely.
all kinds of places.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming in the studio with us to talk about the book.
This was a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely. And what's your website again? Hellcats?
Hellcatpress.com.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
And right now you can see pictures of my adorable hell kittens. But in the future, there will be books for sale up there. So keep checking back.
Awesome.
Check it out now just for the
Just check
cute
it out
kitties.
now for the cats because
They're good stuff.
They are rambunctious.
And we'll be back with more radio horror in just a few moments.